What is going on, guys? My name is Brent and welcome to part 3 of my tutorial series on how to create the game Super Mario Bros. So in our last tutorial series, we didn't get a chance to talk about aspect ratios of the devices that we're on. So when we're on devices of different pixel ratios, maybe our game looks a little bit different. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to talk about viewports, and viewports are the answer to that problem. So a viewport is basically a window into our game and how our game looks on each individual device. So we're going to talk about 3 viewports that LibGDX offers us. The first one being the stretch viewport, then the fit viewport, and also the screen viewport. There's a couple more, but we're not going to talk about them in this tutorial. Okay, let's take for an example a virtual screen width of 800 pixels and a virtual screen height of maybe 480 pixels. On a big TV, if we just kept it in exactly 800 by 400, it would only take up a small portion of that TV. If you're talking about a really tiny phone, maybe 800 by 480 or whatever is too big for that phone. So we need a way to keep our game looking good on the TV and the phone at the same time, and that is where viewports come in. Let's take a look at the fit viewport up here, and it says a scaling viewport that uses scaling.fit, so it keeps the aspect ratio by scaling up the world to fit the screen, adding black bars, letterboxing for the remaining space. So it's going to increase it, so if the width, it can increase the height of it all the way to the top and then put black bars wherever the remaining black space would be. Or the other option would be to expand it out to the width and then fill the top and the bottom up with black bars. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry, we're going to go over each of these in code. So let's take a look at the stretch viewport, and it says a scaling viewport that uses scaling.stretch, so it does not keep the aspect ratio. The world is scaled to take up the whole screen. Okay, so basically it stretches your screen out to fit whatever device. So on a large screen TV, maybe your graphics are really stretched out, and on a small phone, it's, scrunched together. And finally, let's take a look at the screen viewport, a viewport where the world size is based on the size of the screen. By default, 1 world unit equals 1 screen pixel, but this ratio can be changed. Now, the downside to this is that people with larger devices can see more of your game world, which could give an unfair advantage. Okay, so now that you feel highly educated with all that information, let's go ahead and handle some business inside of our code. So we're going to go to our play screen here, and the first thing we need to do is create a orthographic camera. So we're going to say private orthographic camera and call that game cam. And the game cam is what follows along in our game world and what the viewport actually displays. So game, why is that game? It's supposed to be game cam. Game cam. Game cam equals new orthographic camera. And then the next thing we're going to do is create a private viewport. We'll just call it gameport. There we go. And then we'll say game port equals new. We'll start with a stretch viewport. And it takes in 3 parameters. First is the world width. We're going to say 800 and then by 480. And then we're going to give it the camera, so game cam. Next, we need to go down to the resize method here. And it's important that when we change the size of our screen, at least on our desktop and stuff like that, that the viewport gets adjusted to know what the actual screen size is. So we'll say game port dot update, and then we'll give it the width and the height there. Now in our render method, we need to tell our game batch to recognize where the camera is in our game world and only render what the camera can see. And in order to do that, we say game.batch.set projection matrix to game cam.combined. So clicking run up here brought me to this screen, and remember we're using the stretch viewport. So in this viewport, everything is assumed to be our virtual width and height, which was 800 by 400. So you can see that even this screen it thinks is 800 by 400, and it smooches the graphics closer together, or you can stretch it out and it stretches farther apart. So now let's go back and change this to a screen viewport. Now a screen viewport doesn't take anything as far as width and height. If you remember right, it just shows more of the game world. So we're going to run this here. And like I said, this could give an unfair advantage to certain players. So you can see as we go up, the graphics stays here in the screen, but now we can see more on the left and more of the right. If this was a game, you could see more of the game world. So the last thing, let's check, is a fit viewport, and it takes in a width and a height, so 800 by 480, and then the camera. And this will add bars depending to maintain the aspect ratio correctly. So here we go. I'm gonna make this bigger here. And so watch this. You can see as I get smaller, the window gets pushed down, and this, if you can imagine this as a black bar instead, it always maintains the aspect ratio. Unlike the screen viewport, you can't see any more of the screen than it is allowed by the virtual width and height. So in our game, we're going to use the fit viewport, and here's a little picture because our background in our game right now is also the same background as the outside little frame, which is red right now. So here's a better example. If this was our game world and it couldn't fill up the whole screen, it would add these black bars on the side to maintain the aspect ratio for whatever device that we're on. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something. This one was a little bit more technical, so I hope you bared with me. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and post them below. I'm pretty good about getting back to everybody. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and most importantly, share it if you like it. If you're feeling generous, check out my Patreon page. I appreciate everybody watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.